Hunger changes a man. 5 brothers walking side by side. Far from iron walls we did ride. The sun beats down, no water flows, each step harder than before. In this barren land we roam. Lord, have mercy on our souls. Hunger changes a man. Something dark takes command. We ain't who we used to be. Lord have mercy. Hunger changes a man. Empty bellies make minds turn wild. Like wolves we prowl across the miles. One brother weaker than the rest, we watched him as he clutched his chest. The devil whispered in our ears and filled our hearts with wicked fears. Hunger changes a man. Changes. Something dark takes command. We ain't who we used to be. Lord have mercy. Hunger changes a man. We were 5, now we're 4. Lord have mercy. Can't look each other in the eye no more. What have we done? The outback sun reveals our sin. Heaven help us. The monsters that we've let within. Each night I hear their screaming still. The choices made upon that hill. 3 brothers left to carry on. 2 souls forever, forever gone in Van Diemen's cursed land. Lord, forgive what we became. Hunger changes a man. Something dark takes command. We ain't who we used to be. Lord have mercy. Hunger changes a man. Lord have mercy on our souls.
Hello and welcome to the Convict Diaries. This episode is about a not-so-famous bushranger known as Edward Broughton. He an English convict who became a serial killer in Van Diemen's Land, which is now Tasmania. Sentenced to 14 years for housebreaking, he was transported to the penal colony in 1826. In 1830, he escaped from the notorious Sarah Island in Macquarie Harbour with 4 fellow convicts, Richard Hutchinson, William Coventry, Patrick Feagan, and Matthew McAlboy. Broughton later confessed to murdering 3 of his companions and engaging in cannibalism. He and McAlboy were ultimately hanged in Hobart for their crimes.
Born in Dorking in 1803, Broughton ran away from home at age 11. He turned to petty theft and later highway robbery. In 1822, he was imprisoned for 2 years for housebreaking. A subsequent conviction for the same crime led to his transportation to Van Diemen's Land aboard the Earl St. Vincent. Edward Broughton, a laborer, was convicted of housebreaking in Sussex in 1824 and sentenced to 14 years transportation. He arrived in Van Diemen's Land, Tasmania, in August 1826 aboard the Earl St. Vincent. Physically, He was described as 5'4", tall, with dark brown hair, brown eyes, and a distinctive deep dimple on his chin. In April 1827, he received an additional 7-year sentence to the Macquarie Harbour penal settlement for stealing a blanket at Sandy Bay. This resulted in his transfer to the harsh penal settlement at Sarah Island in Macquarie Harbour. On September 3, 1830, Broughton and 4 others escaped. They survived for approximately 30 days before Broughton and McAlboy surrendered at Maguire's Marsh near Austerley. In September 1830, 5 convicts escaped from the harsh Macquarie Harbour penal settlement in Van Diemen's Land, Tasmania. William Coventry, Richard Hutchinson, Patrick Feagan, Matthew McAlboy, and Edward Broughton. Their desperate attempt for freedom ended in cannibalism and execution.
William Coventry's life, born around 1776, likely in Donegal, Ireland, is a testament to the harsh realities of early colonial Australia. His documented history begins with a 1799 conviction for seditious behavior, earning him a 7-year transportation sentence. Arriving in Sydney on the Hercules in 1802, after some records incorrectly listed the Atlas, he spent his early years as a convict servant. His desire for freedom led to a bold yet failed escape attempt in 1808. He and fellow convicts tried to reach India by stowing away on the Cape of Good Hope, but were offloaded at Norfolk Island. By 1813, he received a land grant in Van Diemen's Land, settling near Stephen Martin. This connection became significant as he entered a common-law relationship with Martin's daughter, Mary Ann, and they had 4 children. Financial struggles. In 1819, forced him to sell his land. Coventry's criminal record persisted. In 1827, he was fined for harboring a runaway convict. In 1829, he was again convicted, this time for stealing cattle, and sentenced to Macquarie Harbour. His final chapter unfolded in 1830, when he joined a group of convicts who escaped from Sarah Island. The escape ended tragically, with Coventry becoming a victim of cannibalism, as detailed in Edward Broughton's confession. The lives of the families left behind by these transported men often remain obscured. Mary Ann Martin's story, however, provides a glimpse into the complex social fabric of the era. Born in 1793 on Norfolk Island to convict parents, she navigated a series of relationships. Her initial marriage to John Beatley was short-lived. She then entered a common-law relationship with William Coventry, bearing him 4 children. Her children were Margaret Mary, 1809, Catherine, 1811, 1847, William James Martin, 1815, and John Martin, 1816. Later, she married Francis Cox in 1829. Mary Ann Martin died in 1866, her life reflecting the resilience and adaptability required to survive in early colonial Australia.
Richard Hutchinson, born around 1786, was convicted of horse theft in Yorkshire in 1811 and transported to Van Diemen's Land in 1812. In 1817, at the age of 31, he married Bridget Byrne, who was 23 and had arrived on the Alexander in 1815 Tauber's 16. They had 2 daughters documented. By this time, Richard was living in Hobart with a ticket of leave. However, in 1829, he was sentenced to Macquarie Harbour for stealing a bullock. The fate of the wives and children of these transported convicts is often a poignant and overlooked aspect of their stories. Bridget Byrne's life, though brief, sheds some light on their experiences. Born around 1791, she was a servant sentenced to 7 years of transportation in Dublin, Ireland, in 1815. She arrived in Sydney on the Alexander in April 1816, and was subsequently sent to Van Diemen's Land on the Kangaroo later that month. In Hobart, she married Richard Hutchinson at St. David's Church on April 12, 1817. Their marriage resulted in the birth of 5 children. Tragically, Bridget Hutchinson died on April 23, 1843, from severe burns sustained when her clothing accidentally caught fire in their home. Unfortunately, the records are silent regarding the specific fates of Richard and Bridget's children. Now, poor young Patrick Feagan, who was likely born around 1812 in Liverpool, Merseyside, England, was convicted of theft in Lancaster in 1826 and transported to Van Diemen's Land in 1827. His record reveals a pattern of petty crime, resulting in numerous lashings and additional sentences. Described as short in stature, Feagan's persistent offenses ultimately led to his transfer to the harsh penal settlement at Macquarie Harbour.
Matthew McAlboy, also known as McAvoy, was born around 1798, a laborer sentenced to 7 years of transportation at the 1819 Lent Assizes in Down, Ireland. He arrived in Van Diemen's Land, Tasmania, aboard the Castle Forbes in January 1820. Physically, he was described as being 5 feet 5, 1 to 2 inches tall, with a fair, ruddy complexion, freckles, sandy hair, and hazel eyes. McAlboy's time in Van Diemen's Land was marked by repeated disciplinary issues. In June 1823, he received 50 lashes for disrespectful behavior and using violent language towards his overseer. Just a few months later, in August 1823, he was subjected to another 50 lashes for disobeying orders, specifically for taking his master's dogs out for kangaroo hunting on a Sunday and leaving the farm without permission. In February 1829, he was convicted of stealing wearing apparel and sentenced to a further 7 years of transportation, resulting in his transfer to the harsh penal settlement at Macquarie Harbour. He and Broughton were the only survivors of the small renegade group. Broughton and McAvoy initially claimed that after 6 days, they had been forced to leave Hutchinson and Coventry behind due to their inability to swim across a river. They further alleged that Feagan was killed by hostile indigenous inhabitants. Despite these claims, they were found guilty of being illegally at large and sentenced to execution. The judge, suspecting foul play, urged them to confess to any murders they might have committed.
On the eve of his execution, Edward Broughton delivered a chilling confession detailing the horrific events that transpired during the escape from Macquarie Harbour. He recounted how, driven to desperation by starvation, the group resorted to drawing lots to determine their first victim. Richard Hutchinson, selected by fate, was murdered in his sleep by Broughton with an axe. The group then dismembered his body, carrying and consuming the remains over several days, a gruesome act of survival. Following Hutchinson's death, a climate of fear and suspicion permeated the group. Broughton explained that they decided to eliminate William Coventry, an older member, out of mutual distrust. Feagan initiated the attack, and Broughton and McAvoy completed the killing. Again, they consumed the body. The paranoia escalated further when McAvoy, fearing Patrick Feagan, would betray them, convinced Broughton that Feagan had to be killed. McAvoy then brutally murdered Feagan with an axe and razor, and as before, the group consumed the remains. Broughton's confession provided a stark and detailed account of their descent into cannibalism, emphasizing the group's lack of restraint in consuming human flesh. He also highlighted the pervasive fear and paranoia that consumed them, each man suspecting the others. In addition, Broughton mentioned his prior theft from and attempted murder of Constable Bradshaw. As a final act, Broughton requested that his confession be made public, intending it as a grim warning to others. His confession revealed the brutal reality of their desperate attempt to survive and the extreme, horrific measures they took. Ultimately, Broughton and McAvoy were executed for their crimes, their fate a stark testament to the savagery that desperation can breed.
Edward Broughton's descent into criminality appears to have begun in his formative years, suggesting a troubled and perhaps inherently rebellious nature. Even as a child in Dorking, he demonstrated a propensity for theft, stealing from his own parents before abandoning his family home. This early betrayal really does hint at a lack of moral compass, or perhaps it was a desperate attempt to survive. His subsequent lifestyle involved associating with questionable characters, a euphemism for petty criminals, prostitutes, and other marginalized individuals. This environment likely normalized and reinforced his criminal tendencies, nurturing his skills in thievery. His trajectory then escalated, as is often the case with such individuals, from petty theft to more violent crimes. Highway robbery, a dangerous and often brutal act, became his means of survival, indicating a willingness to inflict harm for personal gain. In 1830, this violent streak found its most horrifying expression during the escape from Macquarie Harbour. The harsh conditions of the penal colony, designed to break the spirit, more than likely fostered a sense of desperation and savagery among the convicts. When the 5 escapees, Broughton, Hutchinson, Coventry, Feagan, and McAlboy, found themselves facing starvation in the unforgiving wilderness of Van Diemen's Land, the primal instinct for survival overrode any semblance of humanity. Broughton's confession, a chilling testament to their descent into barbarity, detailed the brutal murder of Richard Hutchinson. The act was not merely a killing, but a calculated act of cannibalism, the body dismembered and consumed by the desperate group. This act marked a point of no return, a savage transgression that shattered any remaining pretense of civilized behavior. The act of cannibalism, born of starvation, fostered a climate of fear and distrust, in which each man became a potential threat and source of sustenance. The escape, initially a desperate bid for freedom, transformed into a bloody, desperate struggle for survival, turning the escaped men into monsters. So, thank you very much for joining us today. Come back again, and join us next time on the Convict Diaries. Now don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.